At what point do you become a millionaire? I've never flown business or first class. Always looking at those guys. I'm like, that looks nice. That looks like a really nice place to be. Who am I accountable to? Who's telling me I'm doing a good job? This is a mistake. I shouldn't be here.
What does success mean for you?
Oh man. Do no harm. Don't kill someone.
If I stood next to Elon Musk, he would just laugh at me and go, "You're not worth multi-billions."
I'd become a person I didn't really respect anymore.
How is AI affecting you?
Now all you need is an idea, and then you can create things. It was a really ugly moment for me. I felt jealousy. You're not going there to get a job. It is the job.
The vision I have is to make every SME on the globe 1% better.
I'm an optimist at heart, and I can see a really bright future where lots of people are able to create things. That's really exciting. Happiness is the goal. Run towards happiness.
Welcome everyone to the Everyday Empires podcast. I'm here with Tom Crooke, the founder and director of Bobbin's Productions. Best person to talk about Bobbin's is yourself. What does Bobbin's do?
Right, I'm gonna start with a correction.
Oh,
it's Bobbin.
Bobbin.
Now, you are not the only person to do this. Everyone puts an S on it. Ooh. And I'm starting to think, I've been thinking over the years, I probably need a rebrand. Because literally, I get letters from the council addressed to Bobbins. And I'm like, no, there's never been an S. Also, I get called Tom Bobbins all the time. Yeah.
How wild.
Yeah. In fact, the guy who maintains the building that we've got our office in, he's taken it one step further. He calls me Bob. Oh. Short for Bobbins. I'm not of endearment. So there's this like, I've lost control over the branding of my very small company. So yeah, Bobbin Productions. Yeah. Sorry, what was the question?
What does it do?
What does it do? What does Bobbin do? So we are a full-service video production company. We're based in southwest London, in an old converted textile mill on the banks of the Wandle River. Oh. And so basically we make online promotional video content for lots of companies. So charities, arts organizations, independent schools, startups, but also some of the world's best known brands.
And how's business?
Ooh, business. The knee jerk is like, yeah, good, man, really good, because that's what you have to say, right? It is good. It is really good. But there's always, as you all know, running a business, there's just so many ups and downs constantly. At the moment, we're in the middle of a big rebrand and a big sort of relaunch. And the last year, I think, more or less, has been a lot of working on the business, which has been really exciting, and delegating a lot of the day-to-day, I guess, project work to some of our freelancers and also some of our team. And business is good. So we're launching a few new services. We are turning over more than ever, which is really great. We keep growing the team, and yeah, working on some really cool stuff, which I'm excited about.
Well, hopefully you can divulge that a little later on. Mm-hmm. But we want to get to know the person behind Bobbin Productions. I'm learning. And we have a tradition on this show where we ask an initial question. What's your biggest screw up to date? How did you bounce back?
Yeah. Okay. So I thought of multiple ways I could answer this that would be, I don't know, it's kind of like answering that interview question of like, I work too hard, or so I'm not going to do that. My biggest screw up was, it was actually relatively recently. It was on a shoot with a company called Entrepreneurship. And they are like an incubator program for startups. You've heard of them. So we were filming with them for quite a long time, actually. I think we were filming for a few weeks following some of their latest cohort, and their starting of their entrepreneurial journey. So they basically pair co-founders and help them make the next billion-dollar company. So we were following some of their journeys. We were filming a networking session, or a session where basically the co-founders were trying to pair up with each other. And they were in this spectacular atrium in this building. Where was it? Somewhere central London. And I was like, I started to, I tried to get a time lapse of these like these kind of like the co-founders trying to pair up and meet their co-founder. So I left our Sony FX9 at the top of a staircase, kind of looking down at the bottom of this stairwell where all of the co-founders were meeting and they were mingling, and set the time lapse going. Then I continued getting some other footage elsewhere. Something I didn't realize was the tripod that camera was on had a loose one of the clamps that kind of keeps the leg stationary was loose. It'd come loose over time, and over the course of this time lapse, which was I think about maybe an hour and a half that I left this thing running, the leg started to slip and very, very slowly until it toppled. And this camera is worth, the camera is worth like $9,000. The lens was worth maybe $2,500. This is the whole thing toppled over a balcony and dropped about 25 feet onto solid concrete below. The camera just exploded on the ground, totally unrecoverable. Thank God the people down below, they were arranged in a circle around the edge of this room. The camera basically dropped straight down into the middle of this circle of people, and no one was hurt. If someone had been hit by that camera, I do wonder whether someone might have died.
Oh my God. It's quite a heavy thing then.
It's heavy. The whole rig plus the tripod maybe weighed, I'm going to guess, about 20 kilograms. Ooh. Falling 20 feet. Yeah, it was bad. And actually, I remember the ejection coming from my mouth. I remember screaming, no, because I saw this thing. I can remember hearing metal grinding on metal, and then this thing toppling, because basically the tripod kind of fell against this metal handrail and then toppled over the edge. So that has repeated on me. I would say every couple of days I get like a little repeat of that coming through my head, and I'm like, because the cost of the camera was it was so far out of my mind, the cost of replacing all the equipment and things. If that had hit someone, the idea of hurting someone, the idea of that hurting someone repeats on me, and I get shudders. So from that day on, I check every single piece of equipment and make sure everything's tightened, and that is never going to happen again. Because we'd sandbagged it. I was only a meter away from the tripod at the time it happened. It's just that it kind of, so I was doing everything by the book. It's just the tripod leg was loose. So yeah. So the learning point from that, kids, is check the equipment. Yeah, because that was awful. I wish I could like spin that in like a really cool way to show character or something. But no, it was a really bad incident. And I've put measures in place now that will make sure that never happens again, which we were talking about earlier. It's really satisfying when bad stuff happens. I get a lot of satisfaction shortly after, maybe some humiliation or some stress or whatever. I get a lot of satisfaction from tweaking the system, from making adjustments to processes, systems, training, contracts we were talking about. I really like that iterative process of something going wrong and then making sure that never happens again. It's a satisfying thing with running a business, I guess.
We talk about it a lot on the pod, where the concept of who marks the entrepreneur. Because in your corporate job, if you have the hierarchy, you have a line manager who will do a performance review on you, every so often, 6 months, 12 months, and they're marking your performance. But when you own the thing, who's telling you? I mean, you might get some feedback from a client, or you might see something go wrong, but you have to have the ability to, as you say, iterate, have that reflection point, and put processes in place so that things don't happen again. And sometimes they're pretty small things that you just want to get right because you have a standard, or they're things like try not to kill someone with a camera. Which is...
It's kind of 101, isn't it? Do no harm. Don't kill someone. That's like, that for me has been a real learning curve, because I never had a boss, really. I've only ever worked for myself in a meaningful way. I've had minimum wage, menial jobs while I was at uni or while I was at school, and while I was in the early days of starting the company, when I was having to sort of moonlight as a waiter or a barman. My experience of being managed up until, my experience of being managed is you're late. That's it. That's my only sort of touch point as to what good management looks like. I've never had the experience of someone kind of giving feedback or something. And so, so there's two facets to not having someone who can give you feedback on things. There's one, which is you then, when you're trying to give feedback to people, I lack the reference point of being like, what would this person do in my position if I have to give some constructive feedback, or I have to give an appraisal or something like that. But yeah, also there's that issue of who am I accountable to? Who's telling me I'm doing a good job? Because sometimes it's quite nice for someone to just go, hey, you're doing a good job, by the way. And we get that sometimes from clients. I say sometimes. We get that all the time from clients.
Every time.
Yeah, every single time. But it's in terms of you doing your job holistically, it's a thing that you lack, and there's people that are better qualified to do that. Spouses, partners, friends, also your colleagues and the people that work for you as well. Had a appraisal recently with our editor, and just the biggest thing I wanted from it was just some feedback. I was like, how am I doing? It's a really that's a real hurdle. It's
an art form, and it's and you haven't missed out, by the way, in the from my experience anyway, in the corporate world, it's very much like here's a tick box exercise. We've got to mark you on a grading system, and you kind of feel like you're all the way back at school and sitting with your teacher, and they'll go, oh, your emails are really good, so your written communication skills are grade 1 or grade A. And you go, oh, thanks, that's really nice. But you had that small entanglement with your colleague who's given you some feedback here, so I'm going to grade you 2 on your verbal communication skills. And you're like, okay, I don't know what that means. And then all it boils down to is some mark, which then actually comes off whether you get promoted, whether you get a salary rise, whether you get a bonus if there's bonuses. And it's actually quite a significant thing. But it's I've always found it quite difficult to go through that process, because it can come across as quite condescending and very much like you're doing this wrong rather than what you're doing really, really well. And I think feedback has probably moved on, 10 years ago when I was getting it, but you definitely haven't missed out, for sure.
Sure.
So, don't worry. We try and avoid that when we're giving our appraisals at the firms, because I don't want the team to feel like, oh, that one time you did that one thing, we're going to monitor, because you have to take a step back and give perspective that generally people are doing quite well. If something's not going well, you probably shouldn't wait to the end of the year or a time period to give that feedback. It should be live and be like, this is what happened. You should have done this. What can I do better to make sure that doesn't happen again? But also, what can you do? Building the process, as you say, that tweaking. And it feels like you're moving the business forward, which is exciting, because no one ever tells you, oh, that process should be better, unless you bring a consultant in and probably pay a lot of money for it. Or you somebody you even know to bring them in.
Well, I mean, like, so the one person I didn't mention earlier, who I think is a super valuable person for me and my company, is the accountant. The accountant does have like an eye on the books that no one else gets a view on, and probably actually has a much better eye on the books than I do, than the business owner does. How does that work? So I'm assuming that. Wait, hang on. Do you have an accountant?
I'm my own accountant.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't know whether there was like a reason why you wouldn't be your accountant. But so you don't even have that.
Yeah.
So which is yeah. So I do have one person that I can go to for sort of an objective measure on my performance. You don't even have that.
No, and it's one of those things where there's another guest that's going to come on who we had this quite nice moment where he didn't come from much, and he's worked extraordinarily hard over sort of a 15-year period to get to a certain level, and he'd set up 3 businesses over time. He's in the film and TV industry. Started off as a sort of a gopher, and then worked his way up to a studio manager.
Sorry, a gopher?
Like a run-around kind of like an errand guy.
You mean a gaffer? Do you mean a gaffer?
I don't mean a gaffer.
Oh, okay.
I don't mean a gaffer. I mean a Gopher. I learned that word the other day.
A gopher?
Yeah, a gopher.
Basically
I
need a gopher.
Yeah, we all need. I'd love to have a gopher. It'd be amazing. But literally just runs around and does stuff just to kind of get their foot in the door. And be that person that gets the coffee or gets the kind of that costume from this place or whatever. Works his way up from literally rung whatever to now running the whole studio. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
And then he set up 2 other companies to start supplying products to the studio to make sure it had the right furniture and the right water in place. Amazing businesses, and set up with a few other people. And I gave him a call. I just kind of finished his books across the 3 businesses. And I went, oh, your share of these businesses is you've just hit the 7-figure mark. You just hit £1 million.
Wow.
And that concept to him was just, he was like, what the hell are you talking about? That's nonsense. I couldn't have possibly done that. I'm just head down. What are you talking about? And I went, no, seriously, like you own a third of that, 50% of this, and your company of this. And the total is your share, £1 million. I thought I'd just let you know.
Can I ask? So I've never been certain. This is probably revealing something about myself now. I've never been certain. At what point do you become a millionaire?
That's a really, really good question.
Thank you very much.
If you take the point face value, it's when your net worth is over £1 million. Now, you have to think about your asset and liability, like your own personal balance sheet. So the big one, or the big asset everyone has, is their own home, if they're lucky enough to buy one. But often that comes with a mortgage. So taking that net position is what's important from a balance sheet perspective.
Gotcha.
So if that on its own is £1 million, congratulations, you could say you're a millionaire.
Spoiler, I am not a millionaire.
Yet.
No, yeah. Yet.
So that's kind of like in its rawest form. So you look at all the assets that you've got, and they can sum to not just your house, but also like your jewelry, your cars, your the shares in Bobbin Productions.
Sure.
A whole
Well
host
done.
of things. I'm practicing because I'm going to get it wrong at some point. And if the net amount at the end of it is £1 million, then yeah, you're rawly speaking, definitionally a millionaire. Now, the concept of a millionaire sort of grown over the last sort of 10, 15 years, where because of inflation and because of asset prices over the years, particularly in property, you might own £1 million worth of property, but you might not necessarily feel comfortable or feel rich because of cost of living points. I know it sounds a bit odd, and I'm not sort of, getting out the world's tiniest violin for these quote unquote millionaires, but there's a cash flow element to managing your lifestyle and what you have. And so a lot of people say, actually, whilst on paper you might be a millionaire because your business might be worth X and all the rest of it, in reality you might be cash quite poor. So you get this dichotomy of having lots of wealth, i.e. assets, but not much cash. And we see that a lot actually in the SME world, where people are constantly reinvesting in their business in particular, but and it's becoming quite valuable. But to realize that value, you'd have to sell your business, and whether that's possible or not is dependent on a whole host of factors.
Yep.
Selling a house generally you can do. Selling some of the other assets like cars or jewelry you can do, but your business is the tough one, and that's where people, they might be on paper actually worth 3, 4, 5 million pounds, so multi-millionaires, but in reality, the business profit is there, but they're reinvesting and putting money back in to sustain the business. So the concept of a millionaire actually has stretched that definition, that you probably need to have multiple millions, and it depends on how that looks, to feel like someone who's rich and wealthy, which is kind of what the millionaire status is supposed to put in.
Yeah, it doesn't quite carry the same gravity that it used to. Yeah.
Especially if you've owned property in London, say for instance, if your family bought property, or you bought a home and you're lucky enough to buy a home, say 30 years ago, that compounding growth, the property is probably worth £1 million plus, but your mortgage, either you've paid it off or is what it was back in the day, 60% of the value back then. If you bought the property for say 200 grand, over 30 years, it's not inconceivable that it's probably hit £1 million worth of value. But if your mortgage is 100 grand, then you're probably not far away from that status.
It is inconceivable if you if you own a duplex in South Croydon. I'll tell you that much.
Yes, there's compounded growth is a privilege for a few people, not for everyone. But it's a really interesting concept we talk about with clients around like milestones. Like, how do you know you're successful? How do you know you've made it? And a huge element of that is a feeling, which is quite difficult to define directly for a lot of people, because some people might only need a little bit of money every year just to sustain a lifestyle they're comfortable with. They don't need to buy Rolexes or whatever. And so on less money, they might feel comfortable and they don't have to spend as much, and they're earning well. Whereas someone else who wants to achieve a certain lifestyle, which can be expensive, then they need to produce a lot more. So it's, when you look at your own sort of financial goals, I believe it's important for them to be completely bespoke, because they're your ambitions and your dreams and what you want to achieve. And when you do reach a certain level that you are comfortable based on the lifestyle you want to lead, that's probably when you feel you've made it and you're successful. But peeling back and putting into quantifiable numbers, you've got to add context to that.
Yeah, that definition of success is a creeping one.
Yeah. Well, when you've had to answer this question, what does success mean for you?
Oh man.
Gear up the throat.
Okay, yeah. What does success mean to me? Oh man.
It's a
what
really
is
hard
success?
question.
I think I would be really happy when I can make all my decisions based on what do I want to do, versus any degree of scarcity mindset of well, I need to do this because X, Y, and Z. Having freedom, I guess. Freedom is success. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people start businesses because they want to be free. And I think you can quite easily, and I've done this, you sleepwalk into a situation where you've actually built yourself a job, and instead of having one boss, you have 30 bosses, and actually you end up throwing all of your time into this thing, which can be joyous. It can be, you'll know, it can be the most amazing thing in the world to wake up in the morning, go to work on something that you've brought into existence. It's so satisfying and it's so much fun. But when yeah, when you're making decisions, when you sort of have you feel like the left unchecked, it can start to take over your life a little bit.
Oh, completely. And it's a really hard question to answer because, like for me, I hear generally two answers. One is down like the quantifiable route. So people will say, I'm successful once I've achieved this financial goal.
Right.
And often that might be the £1 million, or it might be something that they're aiming towards. Their business turns over, £10 million or whatever it is. Usually it's a big number. And that might adjust over time depending on goals and ambitions. Or it's a feeling, and you kind of align success with financial freedom. And so you can wake up and make a decision like go to an expensive restaurant without looking at the prices and without feeling limited, and you can kind of go to the gym on 2 o'clock on a Thursday and not have to worry about your diary and all that kind of stuff, which I think is what a lot of people want to achieve. I'm enjoying the nods, so I think you're hopefully
yeah, right. So I've realized I am remembering now, I have set myself a line in the sand, a sort of an objective. Well, it's kind of objective. I want to be able to get to a point in my life where I can fly business and that not be a thing. I've only ever flown economy. I've never flown business or first class. Always looking at those guys, I'm like, that looks nice. That looks like a really nice place to be. I would like to engineer a life where that's a reality. So that would be nice. Yeah, and also I think there's a lot of people in the UK especially, and I think there's a difference between the UK and the US mindset. A lot of people in the UK, I feel like, are trying everything they can do to escape work. Like work is this kind of like necessary evil that most people have to do it because and that's never been the case for me. I love my work, and I think this might be naive of me to say, but I think I'll be working till the day I die. I really love working, and I love the things I work on. In the US, I feel like there's much more of a mentality of that. The people are working on a project. They're working on a project for themselves. They're working on Project America. They're working on something. They're bigger. Here, I feel like work is a bit of a 4-letter word, and you kind of like try and talk to people about work, and they're like, oh, don't talk about work. No one wants to talk about work. And for me, it's like it's all I want to talk about.
I think that's so. By some definitions, I think a lot of people will call you very successful because you're doing the things that you love. And sometimes when you're thinking about financial freedom or freedom in general and to choose what you want to do, I completely echo your point around in British culture, it's quite common to just work for the sake of paying your bills, and then you work for the sake of doing the stuff that you actually enjoy. But if you can meld those two together, I mean, it's apparently it's some kind of haven, but it's not. It's super achievable. You just have to kind of figure that out and really sit down and say, I like this. This is kind of how people have done it before and have made money. Let's generate a skill set or do something around that, and just meld it together. And then just doing that means you've hit a lot of goals. You wake up inspired, you wake up interested, you are more engaged in what you're doing, and work isn't, it's just the kind of reference point, but in reality it doesn't feel like work. And particularly as business owners, I find people don't quite understand business owners when they want to take a call at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. because it's just like, that's outside of working hours. That's why are you doing that for? It's like, yeah, but this is a really interesting client. And what if I win this contract and then I can hire more people and further my goals, and then I get to do more of what I love on a bigger scale and with more people. And it's rare that the financial angle comes into it. It's more that I'm enjoying it, and so I want to do it more. So I find it a question that I'm constantly asking myself: am I successful? And where my sort of I know it's going to sound really cheesy, but where I sit to is that I never want to be successful in my own eyes. And what I mean by that is that as soon as I come close to achieving a quantifiable goal, I'll just shift it.
Right.
And it's kind of that concept of, aim for the stars and, you'll hit the moon.
Yep.
And it's just because, if we hit a certain revenue target, I'm like, well, that's fine. That's good. We hit it. Let's go 20% higher, 30% higher, 50% higher. That was a bit too easy, or that was, we need to push harder. Because if we've achieved this, like, surely we've got to be not achieving bigger goals and better goals. And there's always obviously a bigger number. So then you move into the feeling bit, and it's kind of like, well, that's a bit wishy-washy for me. It's kind of like, oh, I feel successful. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I can buy whatever I want? Does that mean I look around my network? And because if I stood next to Elon Musk, he would just laugh at me and go, "You're not worth multi-billions."
I don't think you would even take notice. I don't think you'd even register on his.
I don't think I'll be very much a rounding error on his balance sheet. But it's one of those things where it's an important question, because I think it gives you a guiding sort of light that if you've got a broad vision and a broad goal and you're trying to consistently achieve it, the old adage of it being a process and being a journey and not a destination, all that kind of semi-cheesy stuff, but it is real. And you're just, as a business owner, it's not about getting to a goal, achieving it, and then going to the next one. It's actually about having a broader vision, something that's slightly bigger and more purposeful than just what you are, so that you can then set up an infrastructure to achieve it. And the vision I have is to make every SME on the globe 1% better. And that's thank you. And I think it's important because SMEs, I believe, around the world are the backbone of pretty much any economy. Right? In the UK, 99.9% of businesses are SMEs. 60% of the workforce are hired by SMEs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Which is amazing. These amazing stats. I mean, fact check me, but it's give or take a shake. Now,
what did you say? Give or take a shake?
Give or take a shake.
Is that a phrase?
I'm using it. I'll take it.
I love that.
And
what was that word earlier you used? There was a word earlier you used, and I was like,
coterminously.
Coterminously, yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I whip out just to make people think I'm smart.
Love it. Yeah.
But it's if you look at the headlines and you look at what people focus on, it tends to be those big corporates and big sort of trends that are going on within those corporates and working from home, which is fine. I think they definitely need to be listened to, and what companies are doing to push themselves. And a lot of ideas come from big companies, about big tech companies in particular, around how can you work from home better, how can you have better spaces at the workplace if you're in the office, all those kind of really clever things that people do to be more productive and be better. I think there's some I can't remember if it's Facebook or Amazon, but they have these little humidifiers in the office, which kind of make the air a bit more oxygen rich, so that you can think better as you're working, which is insane. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm not going to buy humidifiers sadly for the offices. But it's down to that granular detail, which is fine. But what if you're a small business, you hire a couple of people, and you're trying to make the world a better place through your own vision and your own goals, and you contribute to your community? Excuse me. Well, then how do you know what to do for your people? Because often you don't know the big ideas, or all these things are happening at the top level. You're just trying to get by and pay some bills. Where do these guys get their support? And so they often don't get that voice because they're obviously fragmented, and there's millions of SMEs that make up those percentages I said earlier. But ultimately, they do require a voice. They do require some advice. They do require the ability to progress and become one of those super large companies. So I see my role, especially with this podcast, to provide wonderful stories like yours that we're gonna flow into, to give inspiration to people, to say, right, well, if Tom can do it, and look at his world and look at what he's been doing over the last sort of 15 years or so, I'm going to take my little bits from his story. Let's look at Ryan, let's look at Patrick, let's look at all the other people that have been on the podcast, and let's take all those little elements and form my own journey. And maybe have some pitfalls to avoid, and sort of make sure that I don't make those mistakes that those guys did, but then also take inspiration from the success that they've enjoyed so far and where they're going. And that little bit of confidence and a bit of inspiration, I think, will go a long way, because confidence I see as being something quite challenging within the SME world. Then we also produce a little bit of content separately around knowledge and little tips. So they've got a bit of knowledge, got a little bit of confidence and inspiration. And I think, entrepreneurs, business owners will change the world off the back of those little things. And 1% is there because I don't want entrepreneurs to feel that there's an overwhelming kind of sense to progress. Sometimes you just need to be a little bit better, just in everything. A little bit better in your processes, as we talked about, tweaks. A little bit better in how you treat your team, maybe. A little bit better in how you treat your clients. Because all that 1% will add up to something actually quite compounding, quite special. And in my journey of servicing SMEs, which is a privilege, I found that you give someone, a business owner, a little bit of knowledge, maybe a bit of accounting knowledge of when they need to, maybe pay their taxes every year so they can manage their cash flow a bit better, or perhaps there's something clever we can do about being more tax efficient so they can allocate that cash flow to hiring another person, or whatever it is. They will change the world. They will set up another department and hire 4 more people, or they will take that advice and increase their revenue and use that to invest in more technology and make their team members' lives better, more productive. And if you can do that on a global scale, I think the world economy will push forward. And I'm relying on their ingenuity because I know that they can do it. And all I want to give them is just a bit of inspiration, confidence, and maybe a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, that's really lovely. That makes a lot of sense. I think happiness is the goal, right? And I think a very woolly, loose idea of success for me would be to make more people happier by enabling them to create things. That's because creating things is really fun. Always enjoyed making stuff, and making stuff that didn't exist before is just really good fun. And something, so we've just celebrated officially our 10-year birthday, which I know Business Clan also did last year. So end of last year was our 10th birthday, and my editor Paul, actually, he was like, "So come on, what are our wins?" And I had to think a lot about what our wins were. And it took me an embarrassing amount of time to kind of come up with like any number of wins. And because we had this 10th birthday coming up, I was like, no, I should probably write out some wins. And one of the dearest wins for me over the last 10 years, that's since we registered the company. In practice, I've been running it for about 13 or 14 years. One of the biggest wins for me is I counted up that over the years I've received 7 invoice #001s, i.e. I've received 7 people's first invoice. It was the first time they were on a video shoot, or editing a video, taking some photos. That for me, I love. I absolutely adore the idea that we gave someone a break. We gave someone their first shot at doing something, at making something. And I love that. That for me was really special. And actually, on the day that we celebrated our 10th birthday, there were 3 people in that room who gave me their invoice 001s. And I was like, that's cool. And they've since gone on to do loads of work with us. But yeah, so that for me is some success. And I'd like to carry on doing that, is creating a world, creating some systems, creating a place where people can create stuff, be that in our team or our clients as well. If I can help clients like make stuff, that's fun. That's cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. And I'd never even thought to check that. Maybe we need to check that Business Clan and Apex, but I never thought to see if we've given that 001 to anyone. That's a really cool metric. That's a really cool thing to think about.
Yeah, like I've actually had to teach several people how to write an invoice.
Yeah.
I'm like, send me an invoice. And they're like, sure. What's an invoice? I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it's just basically asking me for money and where to send it.
Yeah, unfortunately, as an accountant, we've had to send many a template to clients because they'll set up a limited company and be like, right, now I've got to operate.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, do you know how to, pay your taxes and invoice? They're like, no. So you've set up a limited company with all these duties as a director. We've got a clue what you're doing. They're like, please help.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that's part of the fun. That's part of what we do. But that's really cool. I didn't. That 7 metric. Hopefully, will grow into 20, 30, 50 over the
Yeah, and over the years, I've established a few roles that are specifically for feeding people into our kind of like, I guess, like talent funnel. So one of them, so we run a networking breakfast once every couple of months at our office, and I like having some photos of the people from those events. And I've realized that's a really good opportunity for me to bring in someone who maybe hasn't taken photos professionally before. Super low risk scenario. It's not client product. It's for us. It's for our own internal marketing. Internal marketing? It's for our own marketing. I'm not putting them on client work. But give people a few of those, then maybe take them to shoots, but as behind the scenes unit stills. Again, that is work for us. It's not going to the client. It's the stuff for our own use. And then once they've had a few experiences of that, taking them on to client work and kind of establishing a bit of a kind of, I guess, a career ladder in a very kind of like very simple way. That's really satisfying for me, is like nurturing some people from first gig to pro creator, not procreator, pro dash creator. I have,
just to be clear,
we'll have HR all over this. Jokes, we don't have an HR department. No,
not yet.
Not yet.
I really like that. I mean, again, just hearing those stories, I mean, it's amazing. But in all of the, when it comes to the SME world, who was giving that first break to people? It's not Google. Maybe they will, but it's very rare. Like a company the size of Google or Amazon are giving the first job to a young guy who's just come out of school, college, uni, whatever. Maybe a job, but not as a business person or an entrepreneur. But it's guys like yourself who are saying, well, look, you're new to this whole game. We've got a little process, little pressure. We'll give you some feedback. And yes, you will work up to client work, but come work with me for a bit. And if there are thousands of Bobbin productions around with that culture and that mindset, you're then fostering more businesses and more people, but as a self-regulated kind of thing, rather than it being a government scheme or people just kind of going off into the wilderness. Businesses are looking after each other. And obviously there are commercial terms at some point. They're getting paid. They can use that money to buy better equipment and do whatever. But you've got someone that you've trained in the right way so that you can use them more.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah, there's also a really good reason for... I'm entirely self-taught. I never trained formally in camera operating or editing or anything like that. Entirely self-taught over the years. And I think as a result of that, I've learned a lot of things the hard way. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of wish that I maybe had some experience to teach me some of the things the easy way. I've learned everything the hard way, which I think is worth something, not least because I think a lot of video production, as an example, is outdated and rooted in maybe Hollywood or like narrative filmmaking. There's a lot of preciousness that a lot of video production companies have around process and craft and things that are slightly outdated. and there's a lot of fat on those systems, and a lot of cost that doesn't need to be there. And I think having been self-taught over the years, it's kind of like first principles thinking, I didn't pick up those bad habits, and I like being able to indoctrinate my team with those same principles rather than hiring people who have spent years and years and years in that industry, and maybe have picked up a lot of skill, but maybe some bad habits that I don't want. And so we've got a long history of hiring people who haven't had years and years of experience, and I think that has led to a really unique Bobbin way of doing things, which I'm really proud of. Yeah.
No, it absolutely should be, and our little part in Business Can is probably pretty good at this, where we're trying to bring in sort of people who are at school or at college, come through, do a couple of weeks shadow work experience. But when I did it back in the day, I just kind of walked up to an office and it was a bit intimidating. But the second and third time you walk up to an office, it's not as intimidating because you kind of feel your way around. And even if you're doing something basic, like just picking up a bit of Microsoft skills and learning how to pop a few emails and just talk to people, the second, third, fourth, fifth time you do it, maybe you're going for interviews and, going to that big office is not as intimidating. It sets you up. And SMEs do that. We are the ones that are giving those opportunities. So I think it's, I'm going to bang on about it till probably the day I die. But I think it's so important that there are more companies like you that give those opportunities, and they come naturally. No one told you to do that. No one is marking you on those things. You thought it was a good thing to do in and of itself.
And don't get me wrong, it's not just some like altruistic. I get a real buzz out of it, and I really love doing it. There's also a really solid business case for it as well, because to just be candid, you can hire people cheaper if they don't have the experience, and you can train them up and then start paying them more, but you've trained them in your way of doing it, and you're not having to spend time unpicking those bad habits and things. So there's definitely there's an altruistic side to it, but there's also there's a solid business case for it as well.
Absolutely.
Who gave you your break?
My big one was probably getting on the graduate scheme at Grant Thornton, where I trained as an accountant. And I was terrified because in my third year of university, I was kind of sitting, I think it was around February, March time, as I was coming towards the end, going, I have no idea what I'm doing. I really wanted to be a business owner, and I loved property, I loved real estate. But I figured out that my family didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't. But I wanted to start developing properties, and I kind of got very excited about the projects and completely forgot about the money. And so then I started asking my dad, how do I go and raise like hundreds of thousands of pounds, maybe millions of pounds? And he just looked at me as if I was some fool. And as I kept asking him, he was just like, well, we don't have it, but usually people go and speak to investors and there are events. And so I started going to these events being like, I'm going to be a property developer. And then I realized I was like 20, 21, and people are not going to give like £100,000 to a 21-year-old, or maybe they do, but I wasn't convincing enough. So as any good kid at that time, kind of looked at their parents and went, well, my mum's a teacher, my father's an accountant, so probably look at one of those. Didn't have the patience to be a teacher, so I thought, well, let's get a qualification, let's be an accountant. So I applied for a bunch of places, but it was at the end of the recruitment cycle, so I did not have any picks. And so I applied for Grant Thornton's real estate tax graduate scheme, and I thought, I've got the real estate bit, the tax bit I'll figure out. I'll just ask Dad.
Yeah.
And got through to the final stage called an assessment day or assessment centre. And it's basically you against these 4 other people. And the partner who was deciding who was going to hire this graduate was German and had studied in Cambridge. and worked for, I think he just came from Deloitte, massive accountancy firm. And I rocked up, and it was basically between me and this other quite lovely, very intelligent lady. And this lady had spoke German, lived in Cambridge, and was nailing the assessment centre, all the tasks. You know, it was like a group task. She was nailing it, and I thought, well, she's going to get it. She's obviously amazing. Like, who am I? But I'll put my best foot forward. And then later I found out I got the role over this lady, and I went, how did that work? Because I'm sure they would have spoken in German. They would have connected over something. But whatever happened that day, it was that partner that gave me that little break, and that made me feel like, okay, whilst this might not be the path for me, I don't want to have an extensive career in the corporate world. What I wanted to do was operate at a good level, so that I could say that I've been there and I've done it, and I've worked with big firms, and I've worked with some great people, and I was very fortunate to do that. And it gives you a sense of confidence. I think when you get that success through a little email that you're sort of waiting day in, day out for, it gives you a sense of confidence and makes you feel valued. Even though at the time you're not thinking about all these things, you just want a job so that you've got something to do. And most of the time, in my case, I was definitely trying to please my parents and make sure that I wasn't berated when I got home.
Right.
But that was me. What about you?
My break. I guess my break was because I started. I guess the first client that we had, because I never worked for another video production company. So our big break was a company called The Jewelry Editor. The Jewelry Editor. They were an online magazine focused on the high-end jewelry market. So it was a wonderful woman. Actually, co-founders Maria Dalton and Christine Pasquier. They had put out a job ad basically for a video team to follow them around Europe and the US, covering new releases by the jewelry and fashion brands. And this job got handed down through successive videographers. No one wanted it because it was paying absolutely nothing. And a videographer, Guy Gotto, actually, who I've worked with a lot of times since and hired him on lots of Bobbin shoots. He passed it to me. He was like, I don't want this because it's not worth anything. And I was like, whoa, are you kidding me? Someone's actually willing to like pay me to do this? Up until this point, I'd only been filming show reels for actors. So this was like a commercial gig. And I was like, oh yeah, Matt, someone's going to pay me. I think it was like 250 quid for a video. And for me, that was like kind of like megabucks at the time. Super exciting. I don't think they really knew how green I/Bobbin was at the time. There wasn't really any kind of, I think I'd registered the company at this point, but the idea of calling it a company was kind of a bit laughable at the time. It was just me in my bedroom in Turnpike Lane. So yeah, they were willing to pay me, and turned up on the first shoot we had was in Milan, and I keep saying we. It wasn't we. It was me. Oh no, sorry, no. It was Sam. Sam was there at the time. So by this point, yeah, Sam had come on, and he was Sam Bonnard. He was he was actually my manager at a restaurant I was working at the time called Made in Camden, at the Roundhouse. He had kind of buddied up with me, and he was like, let's make videos together, and he was helping me on some of the actor showreel shoots. And this gig came up, and it was flying to Milan, and so we were going to go meet this jewelry designer called Giampiero Bodino, who had his like a villa in central Milan. We were going to go and interview him, and we got on the plane, flew out. We had never worked really for any other commercial client. I don't know whether Maria and Christine know that even to this day, but they were our first break. I think they were in a spot, and had no other options and had no budget to afford anyone decent. So we jumped on. And actually, I look back at that video and I'm like, that was actually a rocking video. We went way above like the production value that we should have. I'm really proud of that video, actually. Yeah, it was really good. It was really a say yes, then figure out how kind of moment, a real growth moment, I guess, of feeling like having that imposter syndrome and realizing that is just the definition of growth, is doing something you're not technically qualified to do. So the jewelry editor. So thank you, Maria and Christine, for trusting two total novices, whether you knew it or not.
That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story, because it's one of those things where I think Richard Branson gets credited with the whole sort of say yes and figure it out later type mindset thinking methodology, and that's kind of the source of imposter syndrome, because you get loads of projects that come along and you go, yeah, I can do that, and then you're Googling furiously what's going on, and ChatGPT, thank God, has been helpful. But then suddenly, once you do it 2 or 3 times, then you become quite good at it, and then you go for the next thing and then the next thing. But as you say, it's not imposter syndrome, it is growth. That's how you build your skill set and you build your experience to get more confident and build your business.
Yeah, and everyone's doing it as well. The more I've gone on, the more I've realized how many CEOs, founders, everyone is just figuring it out. I don't think there's anyone really in business who feels like they have just figured it all out and are just kind of phoning it in, and they've got the system and it's just working. Well, I don't know. Maybe there are some people out there that do feel like they're in that position. But all of the CEOs, all the founders, all of the people at the top of organizations that we work with, they're all just figuring it out. And it's very encouraging, actually, to realize that no one's got it figured out. Everyone's kind of like, whoa, what the hell do we do now?
Speaking about figuring it out, I want to shoot down to 21-year-old Tom. You had just finished drama school? Going into drama school?
Correct. Yeah.
Which one?
Just finished.
Just finished drama school. And you, from what you told me, be the next Hollywood star.
Yeah, that was the plan. Yeah. Yeah. So from uni, I went to Mount View Academy of Theatre Arts in Wood Green, North London. And I did the postgrad course in acting for 1 year. And yeah, the plan was I thought I was going to be an actor. That was the plan. So I left drama school. I was living in Turnpike Lane.
Just to interrupt, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you learn at drama school? How do you learn to become an actor? I'm just picturing you doing accents and like facial expressions and
just doing like splits and wearing masks for like a whole year. That's such a good question. What do you do? I think there's a lot of technical stuff. So there's a lot of dance, singing. There's looking at a phonetic approach to accents. So sort of like breaking text down into phonics. And so using that as like a scientific approach to accents. There's classical texts, which are there's a lot more science to that than art, I think. With Shakespeare, with classical Greek texts and that sort of thing. So you learn about antithesis, iambic pentameter, and all the sort of science and kind of technique of nailing classical text. So that's all the kind of like technical stuff. We also did a bunch of like African dance at one point, which was a module that I think was more about getting us into our bodies as opposed to actually enabling us to do African dance. It was good fun, but a lot of us were at the time, we were a bit like, I'm not gonna be cast as needing this dance. I think it was about getting us into our bodies and sort of loosening us up a bit. So there's the technical stuff that you cover. But then I think a lot of it is it's the soft skills of being able to fundamentally live truthfully in imagined circumstances, and being able to say words in a way that it sounds like you are saying them instead of they're written on a page. I think that's basically it. And so a lot of it is just practice and words of wisdom and coaching and experimenting and sort of doing scenes and then breaking down like what was working there, what didn't work. Something that is kind of a phrase that we sort of got used to saying, which was in it. Like, are you in it? Are you doing the scene? And whilst you're doing the scene, have you got this kind of outer body sort of experience of you're analyzing and you're trying to you're sort of judging yourself and you're going, oh, I'm not saying that word right, or I'm not holding my position, my hands correctly, or whatever it is. There's a million and one things that go through your mind. That would be very in it. That would be not in it. If you're in it, you are in this kind of state of just being, and you just happen to be saying the words that are on this in the script, and you just happen to sort of be moving about the stage in the way that everyone agreed would be a clear way of telling the story, and you're not thinking about those things. The only thing you're sort of thinking about are the things that your character would be thinking about in that moment, or yeah, does that sort of make sense? So it's sort of like practicing and sort of getting used to what that feeling feels like. And it's a very, very high bar. There's very, very few times, I think, with unless you're Daniel Day-Lewis, I think there's very, very few times where most actors are completely in it. I think it's an unattainable sort of perfect state that is very idealistic. But you try and get to that place. So it's about sort of learning how your own brain works and what things you might need in order to facilitate you not worrying about technique or technical elements. It's about being in your body and paying attention to your senses, as opposed to living in your sort of sort of higher functioning part of your brain, your analytical part of your brain. You want to be more in your animal, emotional sort of part of your brain that isn't analyzing. I used to get the note a lot that I was thinking too much, and I wasn't just playing, and I wasn't just being. I was sort of analyzing and trying to figure out stuff. There's the I think Rowan Atkinson is known as a comedian who really figures it out. When he's approaching a role or he's approaching a script, I've never met the guy. I've never actually. This is what I've heard. He absolutely figures out scientifically how is the funniest way that I can say this line, or he really works it out and he nails it. Versus just approaching versus like the extreme other way would be a very improvisational route and sort of seeing what happens. Kind of went round the houses there.
No, that makes sense, because the term that came to mind was like method acting. Because
sure.
You hear people getting to the character before they even have to act out the scene, mm-hmm. and it sounds like that's their way of being in it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you kind of like method acting in a way. So my understanding of method acting is, yeah, you try and minimize the amount of time where you are not the character, and you between takes or maybe when you're not on stage, you're still sort of trying to be within the world. And yeah, you're right. That is just a way, in a way, the way that most people think of method acting, it's kind of there's not a lot of craft there. There's not a lot of technique there. It's almost cheating. It's almost what impresses me is when I watch an actor who has maybe just dropped their kids off at school and they're dealing with a tax return that maybe hasn't gone so well. They've just learnt that their sister or like their brother has just stolen like hundreds of thousands. This isn't your story. This is another story. Someone who can like be going through a lot of shit, but can arrive on set and employ technique and craft to then go somewhere else and to be someone else. That for me is really impressive. Versus someone who has spent the entire day. Okay, so Daniel Day-Lewis, apparently between jobs, he is whittling shoes in southern Italy. And he's doing, I don't know, meditating or something. The idea that he goes to set and then does a brilliant performance. Yes, the performance is amazing. I don't actually find it that impressive. It's like if you've just been living as that person for the last year and you come to set and you are that person, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, it'd be weird if you didn't act really well. What I find really impressive is someone who can kind of turn it on through craft. I think there's the famous story of is it the film Marathon Man with Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman? If I'm right in saying I'm going to paraphrase this, I'm going to bastardize this, but I think the scene was something like Dustin Hoffman's character arrives into a scene very, very exhausted from having run. I don't know whether I'm just thinking because Marathon Man, but I think he's been running and he's arrives in the scene exhausted. So apparently the story goes that Dustin Hoffman, just before the take, he would go and run a lap round the studio and he would be running and running and running. And then the crew would be waiting for him to kind of do his lap. And then after about 10 minutes of him sprinting around the studio, he would arrive and then he would, and then open the door and he's in there and he's dripping with sweat. And then it's cut. Okay, we're going to go for another take. And apparently Laurence Olivier took him aside and he was like, my dear boy, how about we try acting this time?
Oh.
And he was just like, what you could do is just kind of imagine and you could pretend that you are tired and you are exhausted and do some acting. And it's quite pithy. And I don't know whether you can't act sweat. That takes like, I don't know, glycerin spray or something. But the point is that there is technique there. And there's also, there's a raw option, which I think is quite difficult to replicate, versus craft, which can be replicated. And there's almost like a system. If we're talking like in business terms, there's like a system. Method acting, I think, is sort of very unreliable, I guess, because if you're not feeling it, then you're kind of screwed. If you're not feeling it that day, or the stars haven't aligned, you haven't had your lemon and ginger tea with the exact way you like it. Thank you, Tilly. And that means you can't do the scene. Then I think that's a bit of a problem. Versus technique. Okay, so one thing that we worked on at drama school was breathing technique to be able to replicate it's kind of a psychosomatic thing. You instead of trying to work yourself up into an emotional state by just thinking horrible things, you could start with the breath and you replicate what the diaphragm would do in times of trauma, and that then psychosomatically makes you start feeling distraught. So you start kind of like playing with your diaphragm and you replicate the breathing patterns, and that then makes you feel something, which is cool. I got off on that idea because it's a system that can be relied upon to create something, which I actually find much more impressive than the kind of like, guys, I'm going to need half an hour in my room to like whip myself up into a trauma. Because also, I don't think people go to the theatre or watch a film to watch someone have a breakdown. I don't think people go to watch people having an absolute crisis. I think they go there to watch a story and to hear a story. And I think a lot of the stories you hear about some method actors, the kind of the process becomes the thing rather than the storytelling, and the storytelling is the thing. And I really respect the actors who take the time to understand what the story is that they're telling, and then figure out how to tell the story clearer. That's something that we got coached on at drama school. Was there's acting and not acting, and there's in it and not in it. There's responding to the other person. There was this kind of like finger kind of movement that would kind of be passed around. It's like, you're either doing this is kind of acting, is when you're responding to what's actually happening in the room, versus this, which is just you doing your own thing, and you've prepared this interior monologue, and you've got your backstory, and you're doing a great solo performance, but actually you're not paying attention to what is actually happening in the room with the other person. And I think I think instinctively, maybe some people don't, they're not able, they haven't got the language to explain this, or they don't necessarily, they don't know what they're looking at. But I think instinctively people can feel when this is happening. When you see two people and they're just talking, and they're just reacting off of what the other person is saying, and they're alive in the room, versus if someone's just kind of giving it lots of shouting and screaming and whatever. I think people instinctively kind of can tell the difference. So once you're acting, then it's clear and not clear. Are you being clear or are you not clear? And that's something that's really important in acting. It's like, I don't know, to take an obvious example, it's like mumbling. If your acting results in, there's a lot of like True Detective, if you've ever seen True Detective, so you can barely hear what's going on. If it results in that, and people aren't actually hearing the words, and they're not understanding the story, then what's the point? We're just watching two people have a grumble fest. Yeah. So there's acting and not acting, and clear and not clear. And once you're acting, then it becomes, are you being clear? And then it's working on that, and how do you get clearer? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's I think a sort of high level view of acting is sort of, you learn your lines, you go into the scene, you're either kind of a couple of emotions, you're angry, you're sad, you're whatever, and you just get on with it. Whereas even just kind of the insight you've provided just now, it's actually, there's loads more to it about the connection of the energy in the room, what the other actors are doing, if there are any in the scene, obviously the context of the story and the wider sort of piece of the movie or the show or whatever you're doing at the time. And it's not a simple case of just learning lines really well and blurting them out.
Well, I mean, like, you do hear about, I don't know, Jennifer Lawrence has kind of gone on record and she's like, yeah, I just learn the lines and then I come and say them. And that's cool, because like, some people can instinctively do it, and they're not really thinking about it too much. There's not, they can just do it. But that's not really helpful to enable other people to do it who can't instinctively do it. You need some level of craft and some kind of like system. And I think there is a degree of you can do it or you can't do it. I think taking someone who really, really cannot do it and getting them to a place where they are like world class would be probably quite a journey that I don't think I've seen. But there is definitely craft to it that I really love, and I I love any actor who relies on. I really love actors who, treat themselves like a sports person would, or a musician would, or like a sports person doesn't just kind of like sit around meditating for months and then goes and puts in a world-class performance. It takes a degree of craft and skill. Yeah.
I've always wanted to know, how do you learn so many lines? Because it must be difficult to have that in your head.
It's really funny. So I stopped acting a few years ago, and the question, how do you remember all those lines, always used to really bum me out. Like when you've just put in what you feel like is a really great performance, and you come off and like your mum's there and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you, how did you learn all those lines? And you're like, man, that is the least impressive thing about the thing that I've just done. Like, why is that the thing? But it's really funny because since stopping acting, I now go and see my wife in a show, say, and suddenly I'm like, oh, you know what? That is actually really impressive. I'm sat there, I'm like, wow, suddenly the idea of learning like pages and pages of script, like, so I did a production of Henry V, and that is like reams of text, man. That is a lot of text that you have to commit to memory. By the time I managed to do it, now if you'd asked me to do it, I'd be bricking it. I'd be really, really scared. How do you do it? I think with classical text, with Shakespeare, say, it's musical. You know, you can learn a song a lot quicker than you can a novel or like a chapter of a novel. You could learn a song and it really sticks because it's got musicality. There are other senses being employed, or rather different areas of the brain that are being employed. And the more areas of the brain you can engage whilst learning something, I think neuroscience tells us that forms stronger memories. If you can be physically doing something whilst learning lines, because that's the other thing, is the lines stick a lot easier, I think, and I think a lot of actors find this, once you've blocked it, which is basically you've set roughly what the action is. Once you've got the blocking in and you associate, it's like, oh yeah, when I'm bending over here and I've got my hand here, I say this. That really helps with line learning, but it's dangerous because, like, what if you aren't in that place at that time? And I think that's when people suddenly fall into a black hole and they're like, oh my God, I don't know my line, because actually when I was learning this, I was sat in my chair at home, and now I'm on stage in front of like 400 people. The brain struggles to kind of like remember that thing. So there's like twinning it with, what is it? The musicality helps of classical texts with the verse and iambic pentameter. That really helps. There's the twinning it with as many other parts of the brain, using other parts of the brain whilst learning something. So like moving around the space or like doing a particular action, that helps. And also just like pure graft, pure just time, and it's the worst. It was always the worst part of the job, is just putting aside hours and hours and hours to just drill lines. So I don't think there's some people can do it a lot quicker than others.
Yeah.
I was always quite quick to get a rough handle on the text and have it loosely up in my brain. I'm not sure I could ever say that I ever learn every script 100% accurately. I think in terms of accuracy, I don't think I ever quite got there 100%, even with Shakespeare. Sorry, Will.
I'm sure he wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
But so let's bring it back. So 21-year-old Tom, smashed drama school, and you're out in the world trying to become an actor. How does that process work? How do you get auditions? How do you get an agent? I mean, what's that process like?
So I was lucky. I got an agent straight out of drama school. Amanda Beckman at the Urban Associates, and she was my agent right up until the day I stopped acting. So I left immediately with an agent. A lot of people in my year didn't, and so what followed for them was years of trying to knock on doors and get people to try and pay attention to you. In terms of getting jobs, it was for the longest time, it's just work breeds work. And I think that's true of any industry, right? I think it's just, you build up your network, and your work comes from your network. Some auditions came my way that were kind of like gateways into bigger, better stuff. But generally, I'd say like 75-80% of my work always came as a result of a job. They were like, oh yeah, we work together on this, let's now do this. And then someone else on that job would kind of splinter off and do another thing. And then you'd find yourself in their show, which I guess is, that's the same for most industries, right? It's like people like to work with people that they know and trust. So it was, it was basically kind of, work breeding work.
And how did you convince Amanda, if there are sort of actors out there who are going through drama school right now, or they want to become represented, how did you convince Amanda to represent you?
Raw talent. Animal magnetism. No, that was we had a showcase at the end of drama school. So you have at the end of your training, you get put on stage. We were at the Criterion Theatre in the West End. Loads of agents get invited, and you basically are cattle. You just like do this performance. You do a monologue and a duologue, I think it was, and you hope that someone in the audience kind of goes, that guy. And thankfully, Amanda spotted something and thought I'd be useful to have on her books.
Yeah. And the process of auditioning. Tell me what that's like. It sounds awful.
Yeah, auditioning. Is really hard. So generally you would be sent some material, some parts of the script in advance. How in advance sort of varies, but I think normally you would be sent them a few days in advance, part of the script, and then you would either go in person and meet a panel of the creatives and the maybe the producers, casting director. Sorry, I should say, before you're even in the room, before you even got the audition, that's a whole bloody process in itself. It's like getting the invited to the audition is like 90% of the graft. And I never quite figured out how you do that. That seems to be, it's part of the reason why you have an agent, is because they're kind of like farming you out, and spotting those job opportunities. So once you're in the room, you're generally presenting your version of your interpretation of the character, of the scene, with someone on the auditioning panel is probably reading in for the other person off camera or off sort of somewhere else. And then you do it a couple of times. People give you some feedback and say, okay, can you do it more like this? And then that's it. And then you might get recalls. So you'll go back for successive auditions. I think it's not totally unlike interviews. I guess there's some important differences though between auditioning and interviews. There's a lot of work that goes into auditioning. There's so much prep and so much learning of lines, of preparing a character, preparing an interpretation. There's very few, you can't, one audition is totally different to the next audition. So I say this as someone who's not really interviewed at a high level. Like I said, the only interviews I've ever had have been for menial jobs, bartending, working as a waiter, working front of house. And so I've never really been interviewed at a high level. I imagine that's a really horrible process as well. I've seen The Apprentice. I kind of seen, I don't know whether that has any bearing on reality at all. Yeah, but the amount of work that goes into that prep is substantial. Another thing is that you very rarely hear back, yes or no. And there was a big move in the industry a few years ago to sort of get better at that, at least telling people no, because that seems like an idea that shocks a lot of people who aren't actors. The idea that you kind of go through all this trouble and then silence, nothing, not even a no. The first you hear that you haven't got it is when you see the casting announced for the thing. So that's very different.
It's the same in the interview process for corporate jobs. Yeah, you very rarely hear back, and you just wait a couple of months, and you're like, okay, well, I didn't get it.
What's with that? What is with that? It's so lazy. No one's expecting reams of information. You just want an email. It can be stock. It can be copy and paste. I don't even. It might have his dear sir, madam. Just tell me. Like it's the least they can do, because there's a lot of work that goes into preparing for those things. In interviews or auditions. I guess there's like a lot of your. I always found it quite funny how much of your audition hinged on your reader. So like if you go into the audition and your reader is you know what, it's not even like, if they're bad, that's fine. I'm not expecting anything. It's when they start like trying to do something, but it kind of derails what you prepared, and you want to be responsive to what's happening in the room, because that's good acting, is being responsive to what's in the room. But if what's in the room is totally unrelated to the story, if they're like, if they're saying the wrong thing and you're having to respond to that, that's a really hard thing to negotiate. It's like, do I react to what I've just been given, or do I just imagine that they've given me what I thought the character would give me? It's a very basically, I think auditioning and self-taping increasingly now, which is you record your audition. It's a different skill set to acting. Basically, I think it's a different thing, because I think acting, you should be responding to what's in the room, whereas auditioning, there is a much more of a need, or much more of a requirement to imagine what the other person's doing, which would be bad acting. So there's kind of some skill to that.
Well, it's the same thing in the interview process, because you get given. Normally, it's you have a meeting with someone and they just ask you a bunch of questions, and as long as you can sort of semi-articulate yourself, then fine, but you're not really practicing the job. Then you might get given a task to do, which is sort of semi-related to the job, like an output. So in the financial world, I used to do financial models on the Excel kind, and on that you just...
Well, what's the other kind?
You don't
do you mean like... okay, yeah. I've seen those photos.
I'll leave the audience to guess. But you whip up a little Excel model, and then they kind of judge it and go, "Oh, that's quite cute," or "That's terrible. That's not as efficient as it should be." And then you just walk out and go, "Did I even get it right or not?" But then
that's cute. I think it's gone badly, right? If they say that's cute. Yeah. That's cute.
That works. That doesn't work. Explain this cell. But then your actual job, that's probably about 20% of it.
Yeah.
Your actual job is around sort of managing people, or managing a client, or doing something probably quite different. And it's difficult to replicate every aspect, but it's really hard to interview people appropriately. You often have to just judge character and kind of take it from there, unless it's something super specific and technical. But I imagine auditioning, like, it's quite interesting to hear you say that it's very different to the actual acting job.
Yeah,
because in my head, actually, I would have thought it's pretty close.
Well, hang on, but important caveat, because because I think the what you are doing in the room, I think, is very different. But something that I came to appreciate later on, and this was I heard. Who's the actor? Breaking Bad plays the Bryan Cranston. Yeah, he said that the key to longevity as an actor is to realize that that auditioning, you're not going there to get a job. It is the job. Like that is part of the job. And if you're going to the auditions as a route to a job and you don't get that job, that's really hard. And it's a real sucker punch. And then you have to pick yourself up at the floor, up off of the floor again, and trying to find that energy to keep going is really, really hard. And it's better if you can see auditioning for what it is that's, you are going to work that day. You're going to work and you are presenting your interpretation of of that scene, of that character. Okay, and if you didn't get it, okay, that didn't align with their thinking of it. I still did it. That was I did my performance, and I'm happy. And okay, that performance is not continuing now. That's okay. Next, I'll go on to the next job. But yeah, seeing it as part of the job. Actually, I can imagine that being very much easier with acting than in the corporate world or in interviews, where I guess it would be really difficult to look at interviews as the job.
Yeah. No, I think it's always something we wrestle with, because we don't know, unless we give someone a tax return to fill in, then they're kind of just doing free work in an interview, which is tempting. But we've had to refrain from that. What's been your worst audition? Or is there one that sticks out?
Man. Yeah, okay. Well, my worst audition. I remember I can't sing or dance. And I think at drama school I kind of got to a level where I could kind of move my feet in a way that kind of looked a bit like dancing. I definitely have never been able to sing. I got put up for the Dr. Seuss musical. Seussical. It's called Seussical.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I got put up for the role of the cat in the hat.
Oh.
This was going on at the Greenwich Theatre, I think. It was being done by a theatre company called Cellar Door. Quite a big theatre company. I was really excited about it. And yeah, I was put up for the role of the cat in the hat. And I was to my agent, I was just like, you know this. You absolutely cannot sing or dance. She was like, no, don't worry. It's not a singing part. The cat actually just sort of narrates the thing. And I was like, okay, fine. And so then she put me up for it, and I got an audition, and they sent through a song, and I was like, no, again, like I can't. This is going to be a waste of time. If they're expecting me to sing, I can't do it. And they were like, no, it's just like you might have to do some like light chorus, like choral kind of stuff, like just with lots of other people. So I think they're going to do a round where like you're with other people and you just have to kind of add your voice to that. I don't know. They sold it to me as this really like, no, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. Anyway, you can probably guess. I turned up on the day to the audition, and I was waiting outside. And the worst thing about auditions is you because they're generally quite loud, especially for theatre. You can kind of hear the person before you very clearly about what they're doing, and you're sat there going like, "Oh my god, oh no, I've got this all wrong," and you're second guessing yourself. And I heard the guy before me, and he was straight off like a West End stage. He was absolutely phenomenal. His voice was killer. I was sat there just being like, this is a mistake. I shouldn't be here. And I walked into the room, and I thought there were going to be other people there that we'd be singing together. It was just me, and I had to sing this song. I can't remember what the song was, but I remember at the end of my singing it, the pianist who was accompanying me just went, "Oh well."
That's so brutal.
Oh, well. Oh, man. I had to laugh, and I was like, and I said, I'm sorry. I said, which I've never done. I never did before. I never did since. But I could see that I'd wasted their time. Everyone's time was wasted, and I was like, so I was laughing, and I said, I'm really sorry, and I left, and my agent called, and she was like, how'd it go? I was like, well, absolutely didn't get it. No.
You know that singing thing that you were talking about?
Yeah.
I had to do it.
Yeah, I just remember that. It was just the reaction, well.
Yeah.
Really, that pinged around in my head for years afterwards. Well.
But that's like, thank you for sharing that, because I was hoping that there might have been a comment from someone that does sit with you, because a lot of actors, when they tell their story of auditions, there's that one moment where that inspires them to be like, you know what, that's a fuck you, I'm going to take that and I'm going to use it as inspiration to do better next time. But if singing is not your thing, it's sort of like, well, I can't actually defeat this. I'm not gonna. Yeah,
it was a nice moment actually. I was just like, I knew I wasn't right for that. I went because my agent got it for me. I should have maybe had the courage to be like, no, I know this is not the right role for me. Yeah.
And on the other side, because you did have success in that, I know you're not an actor anymore, but you obviously had some success to keep you going for those sort of 13, 14 years. Can you share what's the biggest thing you were in and that kind of kept you moving?
I was never in anything that big. And ultimately, that was one of the reasons why I stopped, is because I wasn't working I wanted to be in the best rooms. I wanted to be the best person inside of the best rooms. And ultimately, I just got really frustrated with not being in the top rooms. I wanted to be in Christopher Nolan films. That was my top goal. That said, so in terms of like bigness of stuff, I didn't do very big things. I was in a lot of theatre shows, a lot of like touring theatre, and the odd short film. So that's it. I didn't do any like big stuff, but man, I had so much fun. I had like the amount of jobs that I was so proud of, and artistically, I felt immensely fulfilled with a lot of stuff that I did. So I guess what would have been like my crowning sort of job. It's interesting. I think I'd probably say. I did a tour of Journey's End, which I don't know whether you've heard of that. It's a play set during World War One about officers in the trenches in World War One, and I was playing a character called Captain Stanhope, and he's the sort of leader of the group of guys, and we did a tour of that around the UK, and I just, every night we performed that play was an odyssey. I'd lived 1,000 lives during that show, during that tour. I look back on it and just, I was so proud of what we achieved with it. I was also it was interesting after the show finished. I remember there was another production of Journey's End that was being staged in Belgium, in Ypres, in the trenches. Oh my God. And I remember all of the cast, it was weird actually, all of the cast from the production I was in was approached to do this other production, totally separate production. It was basically like another company coming and just like stealing everyone from another company and just going, come work for us. And I remember quite a few of them went and did it, and I heard it was amazing. I said no, because I felt so satisfied with, and I hope this doesn't sound privileged, because don't get me wrong, I really could have done with the money, but I also really felt so satisfied with, I felt like I juiced that play and that character for all it was worth. I was so happy with what I did there that I felt very at peace with not doing it again. I was like, I don't want to do it again because I think, and if I do it again, I think I'll be I want to leave it on a high. Yeah, I felt like I did it. I felt like I really did it. Yeah.
That's amazing. And let's go. So let's put some time on it. So 21 till about what age did you sort of say, right, acting is, I'm going to put a plug in it?
Ooh, officially, I think, well, gosh, there's so many points.
Yeah.
It was a slow process. It was a slow decoupling with a few specific markers. I would say I started really questioning whether I wanted to act anymore about 2 or 3 years ago. So that would have been about 13 years after I left drama school. I'd already been acting before drama school. I'd already been acting for, I don't know, 8 years before that.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, not in anything big, just kind of like whatever I could, school plays or like theatre shows outside of school. I remember while I was at uni, I was in a show called That Face in a theatre in Earlsfield, Tara Arts. And I remember, man, I was commuting from Norwich down to South London every evening. So I'd finish lectures, get on the train, come down to London, rehearse in the evening, and then either travel all the way back to Norwich for lectures the next morning, or I would stay at my friend Peter's flat, who lived just around the corner from where we were rehearsing, and I'd sleep on his floor. Yeah, I think about, yeah, well, nuts. Anyway, sorry. So I'd been acting for, by the time I called it quits, I'd been acting for about 18, 20 years, I think. There's various stages of it. I got to a point where the idea of stopping acting actually made me excited for the first time. Up until that point, the idea of stopping acting made me sad. And I was like, if that's the feeling I'm getting, then I shouldn't stop, because this should not be a sad day. If it's a sad day, that means I'm making the wrong decision. And when the thought occurred to me, as it was increasingly occurring to me, and it made me excited about the idea of being able to go all in on Bobbin, which I had been running simultaneously. What was the word again?
Coterminously.
I had been running coterminously with my acting career since leaving drama school. So I started Bobbin straight after leaving drama school. So I've been running it coterminously with acting for 12 years or so. And the idea of stopping acting and just focusing on Bobbin actually made me excited. I remember there was an offer that came through for me to do some work at the Old Vic Theatre, one of the biggest theatres in the country. Something I would have bitten my own right hand off for only a few years before. I got availability checked for a show there, and I just wasn't interested at all. Nothing about it excited me. In fact, it made me think, oh man, that is going to be the biggest headache, because I'm going to have to, how am I going to function? How am I going to run Bobbin if I'm having to do this as well? And I was like, oh, what a pain. So that was a signal for me. And have you seen Harry Potter, the last Harry Potter film?
I love Harry Potter.
Okay. You know the scene when Harry dies and he's in King's Cross Station, and underneath the seat, there's that shriveled little fetus of Voldemort withering and dying.
Please don't tell me you felt like him.
I felt like, for the longest time, I felt like that fetus, that dying little fetus, was like my acting career. And whatever successes I was having with Bobbin, whatever wins I was having, always had this little shriveled, ugly little bit of me that was withering and dying. And in my mind's eye, I always had this little Voldemort dying, and it prevented me from celebrating. Basically, it prevented me from feeling good about anything I was achieving with Bobbin. We'd go through milestones and we'd do some great projects, and I would always have this bit of me that was like, well, you know, there's a bit of me that's failing over here. And I just started to really regret that so much of my happiness was being diverted, I guess, towards this thing that was making me really unhappy. And so that started to really bug me. It started to really and I was like, happiness is the goal, right? Happiness is always the goal, and I think you need to run towards happiness wherever that is, and it changes over time, right? What makes you happy changes, but as long as you're running towards happiness, I think that's probably a good sort of North Star to have.
What's that inner dialogue like when you're feeling that, you know, your happiness being sucked by this other thing? Did you sit yourself down and say, I've got to make a decision here? Or did someone else point that out to you? Did Nat, your wife, point it out to you? Or what was that kind of time like?
Nat definitely did help me. And I remember there was a really ugly moment actually for me when I remember we were driving to Christmas dinner with some of my friends from back home in Hertfordshire. And I remember there was, on the drive, I think on the drive she found out that she had got I think it was like a commercial job or something. She'd got like an advert for something. I think that was it. And it was a really ugly moment for me. I felt jealousy. I felt it wasn't just like, I wish I had that. I felt a bit like I deserve that, and why aren't I getting that? And it was a really ugly moment for me, and I found myself not being able to be happy for her, and I got sucked into my own little self-pitying hole. And that was a moment for me of realizing that I'd become a person that I didn't really respect anymore. Feeling that, I was like, that's not the person I want to be. And I think that over time it's difficult, right? When you're with someone and you want to encourage them to push through difficulties, but you also don't want you don't want them to come to unnecessary harm. You want to support their dreams, and that was always so supportive of my dreams. But I think when she saw that I had kind of tipped over this kind of this point where it was starting to make me unhappy acting, I think she then was able to see that and then get on board with that and start coaching me away from it and being like, is this making you happy anymore? If not, then maybe it's time to walk away. And that really helped, because I think part of what held me back from making that decision for so long was I was an actor. That was part of my identity, and it's what my friends knew me as. It's what I knew me as. It's what my wife fell in love with me whilst I was an actor. And I was so worried about what it would mean if I wasn't that anymore. It was a real existential kind of shift, and having it means the world to me that she could see that, and she really held my hand and let me know that it was okay. She wasn't in love with me because of my acting. That wasn't the thing. I think she obviously liked that I was an actor, but it was me. It wasn't the acting. So that was important for me, just to kind of like almost have, it's not permission, but just kind of having the person you love most say, it's okay. it's okay if you're not that anymore. That's not going to affect us. So that helped.
Yeah, it kind of it kind of allowed you to feel the true scenario, which was that, you're successful over here on the production side. This other side is sort of, there are a lot of stumbling blocks. How do I make that decision? Because a lot of people have business decisions where maybe one service line is doing really well and the other one is not doing so well, and maybe the business was founded on that original service line. You're like, how could this not be doing well? What's going on? Why don't we punch through it? And that decision to go through an obstacle and actually fight through adversity versus cutting their losses and moving on is a conversation I think pretty much every guest we've had on this podcast we talk about. And it's extremely difficult to make that call. And sometimes you just got to put it down to gut instinct, what feels right at the time, and just live with that decision. Yeah,
it's that kind of like persist or pivot is so hard because there's so many conflicting mantras about Rome wasn't built in a day, or no pain, no glory, or whatever. There's so many, maxims that would suggest, no, you just got to keep going. I think for me, the key to knowing whether you should shift is just paying attention to where your interests are and what is the thing you're interested in. Paying attention to what your browsing habits are and what your reading habits are. For me, I just wasn't interested in acting anymore. And I think there's something that our acting coach at Mountain View told us, was that you'll be an actor for as long as you're interested in it. As long as you're interested in getting better, you'll be an actor. And I definitely reached the point where I wasn't interested anymore. The things I was reading about was video production, was running a business, was being a leader, was editing, it was camera equipment. That was the stuff I was looking at, and that's the stuff I would be staying up till all hours searching for and reading about and watching videos about. So yeah, I think that for me is a good North Star, is just paying attention to what you're interested in, and that's the way you should probably go. Because otherwise it's if the going gets tough, you could peel off too early. Equally, you could also just end up digging yourself an early grave because you're flogging this thing that actually really should be stopped, and you should pivot. I think as long as you're following your interest, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think it's extremely difficult to make the call. I don't think there's one methodology that one should have. I think it's a bespoke thing down to you, and as you say, it's your interests over here, but you're being pulled towards this other thing because of the history of acting and being involved in it. But in a business sense, it's sort of I get asked that question a lot as an accountant. Sort of, should I still persist with this product line? Should I still persist with this service line? Should I still persist with being a businessman? Or should I not get a nice cushy job and without the stress and whatever? And my instinct is to say, no, you can do it, like, crack on, because that's the motivational bit. But sometimes you have to cut your losses. And knowing when to do that, I think, has to be scenario based. And with that, it's important that you have a set of people around you. In this case, obviously Nats, I'm sure there are a few others, but having your partner there who knows you so well and you trust to guide you in the right way. Because obviously at the time you're quite vulnerable because you're thinking about so many different things. And for your wife at the time to coach you through that, obviously shout out to Nat.
Love you.
I'm starting to love you too. I want to meet Nat. But it's but I reflect on that myself when there's times when I've struggled with a lot of things, and Yesha's been there to kind of go, actually, do you know what, like, fight through it, you're fine. And that's been an important part of my journey. But I haven't come across, I think, that kind of raw juxtaposition where you're moving over here, or you're moving, and you're quite literally either in front of the camera or behind it.
That's right.
I'm not sure if that's completely opposite because you're still in the same industry, but it's a huge call. One question that's kind of in my mind, if you don't mind me asking.
I'll tell you once you've asked it.
No.
Nah, I'm not answering that.
Move on. Is we had you finished drama school. You've been acting for several years before then, but finished drama school, and that's kind of like the world's your oyster because you've got that free world to kind of. There's no school, there's no other things kind of in your way. But Bobbin was also set up at a similar time. Do you feel that if maybe Bobbin wasn't set up at the same time, and it was 150 million% on acting, that there may have been more opportunities on the acting side?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I suspect yes. There's this tired phrase in the acting world of don't have a plan B. It's kind of like burn the boats. I think there might be some wisdom in it, although I'd caveat that with I think this kind of prevailing wisdom of like don't have a plan B or don't have a side hustle or something like that is born out of, I think, classism, and I think from maybe from an age of actors coming from very wealthy families predominantly, people who could afford to, in between acting jobs, they could afford to go and make shoes in Italy, or they could just go and meditate and work on their craft between jobs, just go and sun themselves on sun loungers and I don't know. The reality is most actors need something else to fill the gaps, whether that be financially or emotionally, or just because you want to be a productive member of society. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. I suspect that, if I hadn't, I fell in love with Bobbin. And so, I fell out of love with acting, but I also fell in love with Bobbin, with my company, with making a world, with, establishing that and growing that. So there was a push and pull. Yeah.
It's the thought that came to mind was not you've got a plan B. So it's not that you necessarily question your commitment to plan A. It's just that maybe subconsciously it's going to be fine because you've got this other thing, and then when you see success in this other thing, suddenly that starts to grow, and then your interests are pulled to that direction. But then you stop focusing on plan A. But in the business world, it feels like the silliest thing to do is to not have a plan B, C, or D, because even though plan A is there, you should still be committed to it, and not having other plans shouldn't be the differentiator in saying I'm not as committed to plan A. That's just you. That's on you. Full stop. You have to have a strong enough mindset to be like, no, plan A is my goal, but I have to have a plan B because it's prudent to have a plan B. It's not about burning the boats, because what if you need the boat? Like, you need the boat.
Yeah, man. It's
survive.
It'd be an immensely privileged position to not have to have a life raft. That'd be cushy. I also don't think it would be terribly fulfilling. I think there's a lot of joy and a lot of thrill that comes from being a bit more perilous position. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's naive to think that you can only be all in on one thing.
Yeah, but I get it. I think it's if you're that kind of person where if you did have a plan B, then your commitment's split, and you can't get into that mindset, then I get it.
Oh yeah, the feeling of not having a split focus for me was revelatory. About 2 years ago, when I decided to stop acting, suddenly not having that split focus gave me so much energy and so much rocket fuel to put into Bobbin. All this time I've been leading this double life where I had a firewall between the two sides of my life. No one on the acting side knew about acting. No one on the acting side knew about Bobbin, very few. No one on the Bobbin side knew about acting. Again, very few. And that's exhausting. It's really tiring and constantly making excuses for one or the other. And suddenly not having to put any energy into acting and just into Bobbin was amazing. And I'm still feeling the effects of that. I've got so much energy for it. So yes, that is also true.
And but your entrepreneurial streak started when you were pretty young, right? I think you said you were 6 or 7 when you when you were bossing your siblings around. What was that like?
Yeah, no, right. So, So I think I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial leaning. I've always loved the idea of earning my own money. I've always really cherished financial freedom, or rather financial independence. Still yet to achieve financial freedom. Independence, though, is really, really important to me. Having agency. And creating things as well. I've always enjoyed creating things. So yeah, I guess like the earliest signs of entrepreneurialism were, I remember when I was 6 or 7, I used to set up a stall out front of our house and sell my old toys that I didn't want anymore to passers-by. One of my best and loyal customers was actually my own mum. Who would then buy some of my toys back and bring them back into the house for me to sell again in a couple of weeks' time. So that was probably my earliest business. Another business I made was actually with my friend Nick. We started a car washing enterprise. We called it T&N Enterprises. We had a logo that I designed on, it must have been, was it Word? No, Art? No, what's it called? MS Paint.
MS Paint.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah. We had so I designed the logo on there and we made flyers, and this was clever. He had a paper round. So we printed flyers for T&N Enterprises, car washing, and inserted the flyers into his newspapers and distributed them around his route. I think we got one customer from that mail out. That was the first time I guess I'd marketed a business.
Wow.
But hey, we got one paying client who happened to be Nick's next door neighbor. And he let us wash his MG. Which we look back on it now and we're like, I would never let two 11-year-old kids with like a bucket and a sponge anywhere near my pride and joy. Like, no thanks. So we did that. I got a job as soon as I could. I went and worked at Tesco at 16. I've always had a real urge to work, to make a business. Actually, I've really enjoyed that. I'm always trying to monetize things. Same friend Nick, he's an amazing baker, and I'm always trying to monetize it. He's like, I just like baking. It's okay. I don't need to make money from this. So it's always been there.
Amazing. And then it was that pivotal moment, I guess, at 21 that you decided, I'm gonna use my editing skills, my video editing skills, and production skills to set up a business. What was why Bobbin and why not anything else?
As in, like, why video editing. Production?
Yeah.
Okay, so while I was at drama school, my granddad died of cancer. Eric, he left me £500. And I was like, if I don't spend this £500 on something meaningful right now, it's just going to get frittered away on rent and bills and things. So I knew I had to spend it on something tangible. So I bought a camera, kind of on a bit of a whim. I bought a little Canon 60D. I bought a battery, an SD card, and a 50mm lens. I must have supplemented that with some money that I had somewhere. I had no money at the time. Must have supplemented it a little bit because I don't think 500 quid would quite cover all of that. But So basically, so I had a camera, and I guess that came from, where did that come from? I had no concept of making a business from it. I just, I guess I've always liked gadgets, and I've always liked creating things. So I guess a camera is like the obvious manifestation of that. So I bought the camera and I started making show reels for all of the other actors in my year. Did that for about 2 years it was just show reels scenes and editing show reels together. And then, it was by that point, I'd been working at the Roundhouse in Camden, and I'd met loads of creatives. That probably still remains like my favorite job I've ever had. It was working behind the bar and working as a waiter in Camden. It was so cool. It was just so much fun. We were working in the Roundhouse. They would have like the iTunes Festival and the Mobo Awards. They would all be there. It was just a really cool place to work. Everyone who worked on the team was just really cool. I was by far the least cool person on that team, and just everyone was really cool. And so I met a lot of creatives, met a lot of videographers, photographers. And actually, to this day, one of our photographer, Veronica, she was a bartender in the restaurant, and we've known each other since then. And so one of the videographers that I got friendly with, put me in touch with the jewelry editor that I was mentioning earlier, and the rest is history.
Wow.
So I guess it was kind of like a lot. There was a lot of. It wasn't by design, definitely, in the early stages. It was just following an interest, I guess. And I certainly had no experience in video editing or anything like that, really. I've sort of just started slowly cobbling it all together from YouTube videos.
I think it's fascinating how people start their own businesses. And a lot of it is a similar story that you told. You just have an interest and you did something, and then you figured out a way to monetize it. And I think it's important when people are deciding, I really wanted to start a business. I want financial independence and freedom, but I don't have an idea. I don't know what to do. And my advice is, go check your Instagram page and go check your TikTok and look at the stuff that you're looking at. Doom scroll and see what you click. And often you'll find that those are quite interesting things, and people have probably monetized that before. So then you just follow a path down. And if you want to do that, the find it seems appetizing, then try it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Then pull all the way back and doom scroll again and think about what you enjoy. Because that's these algorithms actually do a really good job of figuring out what you're interested in.
I think if I were to follow that advice to the letter, I'd probably end up running a puppy salon or something now.
That sounds amazing.
I'll join you on that. Mine and my wife's love language seems to have evolved into cute puppy videos on Instagram.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. But that's one of those things where, it's quite expensive to set up a puppy salon, but why not try it? Or maybe or dog walking or something like that. But it's one of those things where there are so many things that you can do to monetize whatever interest you have. You might as well try it out and see what's going on, because at the very least you're interested in it. So there's some tangible connection to the activity. And if you don't like it and you don't want to monetize it, you can just remain an interest. It's not going to just fizzle out because you try to make a business out of it. But you're trying things.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's important. It's like not getting caught up in the idea that this thing needs to be a rip roaring success, or else I've failed miserably. I think people would do well to just de-risk it and just lower the stakes. It's like, you can just try something, and if that thing doesn't make you happy or this whatever, you can always stop and just the next thing. It's kind of like, reframing it a little bit, looking at life as a series of experiments, and some produce some results, some don't.
And I think if you elevate the concept into, I'm starting a business and I'm going to try and make loads of money, you don't set yourself up for failure, but you set yourself up to make it difficult to fail. And if you just go, okay, I'm going to buy a camera and just do a little bit and see what happens. and I'm going to speak to a few mates and do some work. Or Tanya, who's one of our editors for the show, the way she started out was just, she did some free work for some friends and just started drawing a few things and doing a bit of work and doing a bit of editing. And suddenly her friends went, "You're really good at this." And Tanya went, "Yeah, I know. But it's not all for free. Do you mind paying me, please?" And they go, "Do you know what? Actually, you've got a skill, you've got a talent. I want to use it." And then, of course, to your point before, you need people who are going to give you your first break. Tanya found those people and then built that up over time. And now she's an amazing editor for one of the world's best podcasts, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's one of those...
Hello, Tanya.
She does edit this, so she...
Yeah, welcome to the party.
But it's one of those things where it's not that complicated, but it's the emotional angle of, I'm trying something, it can fail. People might know that it will fail, and I might get judged for it. And having that mental strength to say, yeah, I tried something, it didn't work out, actually is quite a powerful statement to make. And to have the resolve to say, yeah, I tried 5 different things, or I think Richard Branson did over 400 plus sort of type businesses or tryouts, or that's the claim anyway. But I wouldn't put him past him given how persistent he is. But if you try loads of things, you're just getting closer to the thing that you actually probably will make work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might be the right idea but the wrong time. It might be the wrong idea, but you persisted through and you got a bit of luck, and actually it turns out to be something impressive.
And worst case scenario, you've got a story.
Yeah. And what I really enjoyed about your acting sort of career was that you said that you felt quite fulfilled and happy with a lot of the stuff that you did do. And whilst it's not something that is part of your life, I was going to ask you, are you going to do any acting again? But probably not.
No, probably not. At least for now, I realised that I'd been quiet quitting for years, and it's actually important for me now to kind of go, no, I am stopping. Who knows? Never say never, but I stopped it.
But it's nice that you said, right, I tried it, I did well on things, I'm really satisfied with these roles, but I'm going to focus on Bobbin now. It's a very healthy, mature approach to your journey so far. And for me, I would love a lot of people to take that approach to the things that they're doing. They try something, they give it, 20 years to dedicate to a craft is a good, like, no one can say you didn't try, for sure. So dedicating time to it, giving it a go, sometimes a bit of luck's required and maybe that didn't work out. Sometimes a bit of whatever, something has to figure itself out that might be so existential that you can't control. And it didn't work out, and that's fine. And you just do what you can do and then move on. And I really appreciated that about your story. Yeah,
and it's also kind of like reframing it of instead of kind of going instead of going, well, that was a total disaster, and now I need to salvage something from this situation, so I'm not an embarrassment to everyone I know. Just going, okay, I did that. Now next, I'm going to do this, and that's just a simple reframe that's really helped me.
I think so too. So looking forward, I know you wanted to touch on AI within your industry, which I think is quite a powerful topic. How is AI affecting you?
So I think it's starting to affect us, and will continue to affect us profoundly. I think in very exciting ways. I think there's a lot of worry in the industry about it replacing creatives and replacing jobs. I think there's quite a few jobs that will go. If not totally, I think that there are some jobs that will only exist in this sort of like super high end category, which is kind of another way of saying that they're going to disappear, because where are those people going to cut their teeth? But for me, it's there's a few things that go into it. I think we create things, and I think fundamentally those tools that are coming along are going to help us create more things and hopefully better things. There's the nature of some jobs might change slightly, but I think these things are tools, and I think tools is a tale as old as time, that there are new tools that come along. There are people that can use those tools better than others. And I don't think we're looking at a situation anytime soon where you no longer go to a person to create a video. I think how we create certain videos might depend more on AI. We're already looking at just the other day, we were working on a video or a proposal, for some video content for a startup explainer. And they had an image that they wanted to bring to life. It was this image of a, what do they call it? I should know this. What's the computer chips that are quantum? They had a quantum computing chip thing, and they had an image, a CGI image of the thing, and they wanted to bring it to life. And I was like, well, to do that with motion graphics or with CGI would be very, very expensive. Instead, I took that image and I popped it into Runway, and it produced a version of that still image, but it was glowing and it was slightly moving, and it was just a lot more captivating than a still image. That for me is very exciting, because Bobbin was probably never going to employ a CGI artist to do that. We could never have afforded that. It's added something to our service. That CGI artist who, okay, let's imagine that we might have employed that person. I think that person's job will become easier, and they'll be able to produce more content. They'll be able to produce more things. There's always going to be, these tools are not going to become ubiquitous and require no time to use, or no thought, or no expertise to use. There's always going to be a degree of at least a little bit of time to kind of put into those projects, to put into those videos, to put into those clips. And people are very short on time. And also, these tools are not going to remain free. When we saw with OpenAI, they started charging $200 a month, I think it is, for their top tier package. I think the cost of the sort of like the cost of specific things will fall over time as things do. But no one's going to produce a world-leading software and charge nothing for it. There's always going to be people who do things at scale, and so that when people need a certain thing, they will go to a specialist in that thing. What tools those people use might change. So yeah, we're already using a lot of AI tools with things like sound mixing, sound cleanup, with bringing still images to life, storyboarding. These are all things that we never had budget to outsource. It's only adding to our service. So I think there's a real opportunity for a lot of small businesses to add to their service. SMEs, I think they're going to experience some wonderful years ahead. I maybe wouldn't want to be in charge of a large media production company or lots of other companies. I think large companies might experience some real severe layoffs. I think small companies will experience a lot of added benefits of being able to use these AI tools, and therefore able to employ, they'll be able to grow and employ lots of other people to be able to do maybe slightly different jobs. But yeah, does that make sense?
Completely. And I think
it's additive.
Yeah, I think there's two things that come to mind. One is that when we're looking at AI, just generally across industries, we're seeing two sort of tiers come through. What the first tier is that AI is a tool that enhances your service that you provide. It enhances how you deliver your service. It is a way of you becoming more productive. So you take those AI tools, and instead of maybe hiring a specialist or another person, you as an individual produces more. Simple as that, which I think is fascinating. The next wave, or next tier, is that AI replaces what you do. And I think that's where people are getting nervous, for obvious reasons. Now, bringing it back to the SME world, as you say, I think I'm going to use a term, I'm hoping it makes sense, but the democratization of the skill sets with these cheap tools or cheaper tools, I think is going to be a fascinating wave over the next sort of few decades. And as you say, I think SMEs are going to punch way above their weight and start to really compete with the bigger guys. And I think that's where I'm very excited about people becoming more financially independent and free, because they're able to peel away from these big corporates and go, actually, I can set up a firm with 3 or 4 people, generate quite a lot of revenue, and be able to punch through the market with some really good skill sets. And there is a prediction that the world's first single-person billionaire or billion-dollar company with just 1 employee is going to be created at some point in the next decade, which I'm really excited to see if that's possible. So I think people should be nervous about how AI will fundamentally change their lives, but the nerves should be sort of calmed or assuaged through learning about the tools. It's not like we're all got this innate AI knowledge and only young people will be able to know it. We're all learning together. So for a professional service like mine, I'm really worried about anything that is very procedural. So like bookkeeping, for example, in the accountancy world, is literally the definition of, here's a rules-based system, here's AI which is going to learn all those rules and then produce a set of accounts or something like that. I think the bookkeeping industry is going to take a big knock, and it has already. So my world is going to start focusing more on becoming a really good advisor and making sure my clients understand the information that's coming out of some of these tools, using those tools in the best way to make good decisions for their firm and all the rest of it. Do you see your world becoming less about what you produce and more about how you manage your clients and what you produce?
Yeah, totally. I think I've tried to, for years now, I've tried to think of our business as, in part, at least in the experience economy. I think most businesses now should be thinking of themselves as in the experience economy. Fundamentally, I see being on a shoot day is a really fun thing to do. And I've tried to make Bobbin a really fun place to come and make content. And I love giving businesses, people working in those businesses, marketing teams, having a day on set is a really sexy way to spend a day. It's a really cool thing. And I love giving that experience to people. So I think focusing on the experience, but also the creative side, because if we strip away a lot of the procedural sort of parts of the production side, things like filling in logistics forms and storyboarding images. Before, I would have been Google searching images and using them. Now I might use Runway or there's so many other tools out there to create images. Ideating as well, because the AI doesn't get tired, and it's quite nice to be able to just pop in a few details and a few objectives into ChatGPT, into Perplexity, or into one of these tools, and to be able to come up with a list of at least a starting point for some ideas. I think that's really fun, because then it keeps the ideas fresh. You're bringing in influences from outside of your own brain. It becomes a lot less. I don't know. I think it could spur a lot of original thinking. Weirdly, because I think if we can take a brief and get some AI tools to generate a starting point for a conversation, it's like, oh yeah, how about we try out this story or this idea? Some of it might be really weird, but it might spark a conversation, and that's something that we're using at the moment. to try and kickstart creative ideation, it's an amazing tool because it's not relying on my brain and my biases and my because I think with all the best will in the world, I think a lot of people can get a bit lazy, and we know what works, and we kind of go, well, this kind of story arc, or this kind of character, or this kind of look and feel to the graphics, or something like that. This works, so we'll just do that. Yeah, I like the idea of shaking that up a bit. I think that's really good fun. So yeah, so to your point, I think our work can become a lot more creative actually, and also with so we're responding to this really. We're running towards AI basically. We can see that these tools are coming. You can't put them back in the box. They're the worst they will ever be. They're only going to get better. I think there's going to be for some time a real need for authentic footage of certain industries, particularly for certain industries and certain, types of content. I think the authenticity issue is going to be something that AI might struggle to get over. Is this footage of something real? Is going to be a question that a lot of audiences are raising for particular industries that we work in, say independent schools. If people are watching the video thinking, well, yeah, this looks all good, but does the school actually look like this, or is this AI generated? So like some rose-tinted image of this school. I think that might be a difficult hurdle for AI to get over. So we're proposing a hybrid model where we're launching a new service called Content Days, and basically what Content Days is, we come along and we shoot content. So we shoot photos and video. We trim it all down to the good stuff. So we get rid of all the bits that are out of focus and objectively not usable. We give them all a basic color grade, and then we compress them down to usable files. Because I don't know whether you've ever dealt with raw footage. Tilly, you've probably dealt with raw footage. They're very large files. They're also, when they come out of pro cameras, they're very gray and very flat. The sound is terrible. There's a lot of reasons why you can't just drag and drop that file onto social media. So what we do all of that work for you. We give you all of the clips and the photos from every shoot day, trimmed down to the good stuff and ready to drag and drop onto apps like CapCut, Adobe Express, Canva, to be able to create your own content. And that's what I'm really excited about, because I'm really excited about being able to give basically our clients the Lego bricks, 200-300 individual clips of footage from every shoot day, give them the high quality media that they need to be able to drag and drop into tools to be able to create their own media. And that is kind of sharing the gift of creating stuff. I'd love for people to share in that joy of creating things, making something that didn't exist before. It's really, really fun. So sorry, you got me on a bit of a sales pitch there, but we're running towards these AI tools, because I think they are going to add so much potential for creating things. I can only see it being additive at the moment for our business and for a lot of other businesses. I think inevitably there's going to be some fallout, but I can see, I'm an optimist at heart, and I can see a really bright future where lots of people are able to create things who couldn't before, and now all you need is an idea, and then you can create things. That's really exciting.
Oh, it's really powerful, because the element that you're doing is setting up that shot, because you've got that eye that you've trained over decades, whereas someone can't just get a camera out and just start filming and then produce the content at the same level that you produce. Even with the best will in the world and all the AI tools, you have to have an element of, creativity, original thought, and foresight into using these tools to create something that the end user will enjoy. Ultimately, the audience will enjoy. So you're doing the human thing still of setting up that shot using your creative abilities, but then sharing the gift of, as you say, the creative element of how you use the footage and how you use AI to make it a little bit more exciting, so that they can put their own interpretation on it. And that enables you to be very cost competitive, I imagine, as well, because you can say, well, what you're paying for is my creative eye, but what we're maybe sharing in the cost of is that creative ability. So you can go and, take some of this footage and crack on, but I'm going to give you a steer and a guidance and the things that I do.
And also, who knows, in 10 years' time, it might be very different. And I might be like, well, blow me. We're creating everything on AI now. There's no need for cameras. I can't see that happening anytime soon because of the authenticity issue for certain things. I think there are certain things like product shots. Man, that is out. That's got to be out within the next couple of years. The idea of like spending tens of thousands of pounds trying to get the perfect shot of a spinning can. Nah, that's not that can't be right. But there are other places where I think, this authenticity issue is going to be a difficult hurdle for it to overcome. But yeah, who knows? In 10 years' time, we might be looking at might be a totally different landscape. We don't know. I've been really surprised about how AI has come on so far. We'll see what comes next.
Amazing. We have a tradition on this show where we've got a final question to ask you, which you have had some time to prepare for, if the audience don't mind me saying. And that question is, if your 18-year-old self had a discussion with their 80-year-old self, what would that discussion be about?
Okay, so I think I would hope for the 18-year-old to say to the 80-year-old to play more, to remember what playing feels like. I worry that I might forget what that feels like. And I think life can be really good fun. While I was at drama school, a director I worked with, it's called Arena Brown. I remember we did a production of The Seagull, and at the end of that we got some feedback, and I remember going into the room and seeing Arena, and she it was a long silence, and she looked at me and she said, "What were you like as a kid?" And I was like, "Oh man, here we go." I was like, "Oh, just want like can you just give me like a 9 out of 10 or something?" But okay, right. What was I like as a kid? I started talking about my childhood. I had a very happy childhood. No complaints. No big dramas. And she was like, "What did you used to play with when you were a kid?" And I was like, "Dinosaurs. I used to play with dinosaur toys." And she was like, "I think you need to buy another dinosaur." And I was like, and it sounds really wanky, but I started crying. The feedback that I've been getting was that I was thinking too much and that I was forgetting to play and just losing that kind of worry. Just get rid of the worry and just play more. I think 18-year-old Tom would like to tell 80-year-old Tom to maybe buy another dinosaur. Just keep playing.
And what would the 80-year-olds say down to the 18-year-old?
CBT. I think CBT, for those of you who don't know, cognitive behavior therapy. Have you ever come across it? Have you ever used any CBT? I think it should be taught in schools. I think it's the most wonderful thing. Totally changed my life. I went through quite a dark period about 5 years ago. I felt my baseline mood dropping and dropping and dropping. I went to my GP and I was like, I can feel myself getting down. I don't think I'm depressed yet, but I don't want to be that guy that, oh, if only you talked about it, So he referred me for CBT, went for three group sessions, and it was just like one of the best unlocks I've ever had in my life. Gave me so many good tools for being happy. And I thought it was I think it should be taught in schools. I think it's the most wonderful thing. So I think, 80-year-old Tom would just maybe give 18-year-old Tom like a little book, a little dummy's guide to cognitive behavioral therapy. Or is it cognitive behavior therapy?
Behavioral.
Behavioral.
Yeah.
CBT.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be, yeah.
Great answer. That's a very specific answer as well. Which
I'm a fan of the show, so I've been cooking on this for a while, and I think that would be the nugget.
That's very kind of you. And I think one question I've been asking recently has been, let's say your ambitions and dreams that you have right now, they get played out and they get realized, and you're sitting as your 80-year-old. If your 18-year-old was looking at what your 80-year-old self had achieved, do you think they would be proud?
Oh, that's really, I would love to come out with a pithy kind of like, yeah, I'd be so proud that ultimately I did what I was having. I think 18-year-old, if I'm being honest, I think my 18-year-old would be a bit disappointed because I'm not in Hollywood. I think that would, but then 80-year-old would sit 18-year-old down and say, happiness is the goal.
Yeah. And look what we have done.
Yeah.
Wow. Tom, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. And I'm very excited for this episode to go out, because I think I hope you don't mind me saying now, your ability to articulate how you felt throughout the last sort of 10 or 15 years has been something that we've been really excited about to get on this show, because I don't want to go down the sort of masculine route, but I think it's really important that guys talk more about how they feel. And I've really respected and appreciated how you've been so open on that point. And I think to those that are listening, I think it's really important that you have people around you that are able to give you that space to think and feel. I think it's really important for men, because I think we find it, I found it, I don't want to say it for everyone, but I found it quite difficult sometimes to articulate how I'm feeling. I might just be frustrated, annoyed, angry, or really happy, but I'm not quite sure how to say what I'm happy about. But I've really enjoyed listening to your story, because you've shared your thinking and your feeling. And I think those that have listened to it, I think, should note that point, because it's so important to understand and appreciate your mood and your gut instinct and your feelings as you're going through life, so that you can make those important decisions that you made a couple of years ago to then, as you say, achieve your happiness and or at least be on that pathway. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I've loved my Grommet mug as well.
It's featured in a few other TikTok videos, so the audience that knows will know where that's from. Cheers, Tom.
Thank you, man.
Right.
And scene.